Hello and welcome to March 16th Grief Seminar, hosted by Palliative, Manitoba, in participation with Cropo Funeral Home. My name is Michelle Stokotelny, and today we're going to be talking about the memory in little things. David Kessler wrote that death ends a life, but not our relationship, our love, or our hope. This, I feel, is a very powerful statement and one I would like to open our seminar with today. Death ends a life, but not our relationship, our love, or our hope. When we think about discussing the memory of little things, this can include the situations, the items, and the experiences we have after a loved one has died, and how these moments can trigger a fountain of memories, feelings, thoughts, and even unexpected discoveries about ourselves. We might first, think that a particular loss isn't going to affect us in some ways. We find ourselves not knowing how to cope with the feelings that are coming up. We might find ourselves thinking, oh, we're handling it fairly well. And it's interesting how we as humans, we often judge ourselves based on we think we're doing good or not so good with our grief. But grief is not something that hits us all at once. It comes in waves. And it can be very surprising, no matter how many times we've endured a significant loss, just how it affects us differently compared to the last one and then the previous one before that. It has a lot to do with not only obviously who the relationship was with, but where we're at in our lives, our new understandings, or if we still are grieving a previous loss, that grief in itself becomes compounded when we again experience a new loss. And so some of the things that we might start finding out when we're going through our time of grief is that there are certain songs or foods or holidays, commercials, even movies that trigger a host of memories that just flood to us in that moment. And it might be things that we haven't thought about in a long time. As I said, it really does depend on whom we are grieving for. But it is paramount to understand that, at no time is grief ever over. There's a word that gets used a lot in, working with those who are grieving, and that is the word of closure. And, having worked with people in deep grief for many years now, I find that closure doesn't exist in grief, not really. The idea of closure is that, to kind of resolve, unprocessed or unfinished, feelings or things that we think that we need to do in order to start facing our grief and to start moving forward with our grief. But closure, to me, gives the idea that at some point there's an ending. And when it comes to grieving a loss of a loved one that we held so dearly in our lives, that grief continues with us. It evolves and it changes and it grows with us as we go through our grief and our bereavement. It's not ever a time where we're going to find ourselves thinking, okay, well, I'm back to normal. And that is another term that often gets used is, when will I feel like I'm back to normal? Well, as anyone knows who has been through a significant loss, there is no returning to where you were or to returning to who you were. You are forever changed by that loss. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, for the worse or for the better. We do well to not judge these things as being better or worse. Obviously, for a great period of time, we are going to feel like we're feeling a lot worse because we are going through a very low period of our lives where we are facing the loss of a loved one who meant everything to us. And so, remembering that while we won't stay in that specific place forever, we can't also look towards being, going back to a time of I'm going back to normal. Things might happen externally. People go back to work, people go back to school, certain activities have to continue on, meals still need to be made, things still need to be tended to. But how we feel on the inside, that changes forever. And it really is up to us how we face that time and what we're going to do with it. And so some of the things that might come up, especially if you lived with a person or had a very close relationship with them, even a few weeks or months after their death, they might receive some mail, and that can be extremely triggering where but the person who sent this, or the company that sent this mail, had, either didn't know or didn't, know in time. And it's like you feel that wave of grief coming all over again. And it can take us by surprise, even if it has been years. There are a number of people who, find themselves feeling very surprised that after a number of years, they can still kind of go right back to that moment, how they felt in the first few weeks of facing their new loss. And it's so important for us to remember we can't judge ourselves on this. As they say, with great love, comes great loss when they die. And so every bit of loss, or every bit of sadness, or every bit of difficulty that you're feeling, regardless of where you are in your timeline of grief, is normal and a testament to how much you loved that person or those people. And if anything, grief can be a very beautiful time in our lives. And it might not feel that way, and I understand that, absolutely. It doesn't have to feel that way right away, but it can show us so much about ourselves, about how great our capacity is for feeling for another person, or for many people in our lives, and for what it means to give a part of our hearts to those who mean so much to us. And so we might notice throughout the weeks and months and even years, we still have their birthday in our phones or our calendars, and reminders of anniversaries and things we had planned to do. Not every death happens expectedly. Sometimes suddenly something changes, and all of a sudden someone we weren't expecting to say goodbye to is no longer with us. And we had planned to go see go to a museum 3 weeks after their death, and we had no idea. And so it's so important to be gentle with yourself as these moments come up, because they are reminders, of course, about not only did we have our lives so intertwined with them, that a lot of what we were going to do and a lot of what we were going to experience in this life depended on their presence. And that is the most difficult part, generally, of grief in itself, is the physical loss of a loved one. No matter what we feel in terms of what happens next, or where our faith is, our spirituality, the physical loss is felt by all. Everyone who endures any type of loss, any type of death of a loved one, goes through that physical loss. And that can be a really great challenge when we're facing our grief. Thinking, we don't always think about, when is the last time I'm going to hug this person? When is the last time I'm going to hold their hand? When is the last time I'm going to hear their laugh? And a lot of these things come up while we're in the grieving process regarding those who are still with us. And this is, again, a reminder for us to not just go through every little moment and think that they're just completely ordinary or mundane, but rather to appreciate every single moment that we do have with our loved ones. Grief can make us very raw in our emotions. We can completely shift our priorities in life, recognizing that certain things that we thought were very important maybe are no longer important to us. But it also can make us much softer. It can make us more compassionate. It can make us see others as vulnerable human beings, just like we are. And that can connect us with others. That has the potential to help us through this difficult time and help us to heal what is going on inside of us. When we talk about the memory in little things, I like to go back to thinking about the looks that people share with each other. You have a husband and wife, or partners, or even good friends who have their own little language, that knowing look that no one else catches in a room, or the inside joke that they had started 20 years ago and they don't even remember how it started, but it's always been their relationship. And when that person dies, those moments still happen where you want to look at them, or you want to say that joke that only you understood. And that can hurt a lot. It can definitely hurt a lot. But it can also fill you with gratitude for having someone in your life for so long that knew you so well, who got you, who understood you, who shared the same sense of humor. And there's nothing stopping you from still continuing with that. Include them in those jokes. Still make those looks, feeling as though maybe they are watching, maybe they're there sharing the same joke with us. And sometimes that feeling of connection can help us through a great difficulty if we are facing one of those huge waves of grief that comes out of nowhere. And for the inside jokes that only you would understand with them, sometimes those can be shared with others. It's like, okay, well, this is something that we used to share together, but now I want to share it with others. Maybe not everyone will understand it. Maybe they won't understand why it's funny, but they might like to hear the story. And this is where sometimes, especially if we're grieving the loss of a partner or somebody that was really close with us, that we had all those inside jokes with, that we had those knowing looks and just that secret language, that we can start to feel a little isolated. We can start to feel like, no one gets us, or we're not being seen or heard the same way that we were. But this gives you the opportunity to not only connect with others that are still here, but to share with them the person that you knew. Maybe they didn't know them the same way that you did. And by sharing the stories, by telling, the jokes, by sharing how these things came to be, or how you had a running joke all these years, or even your nicknames, explaining why things were the way they were, can help you to connect with others and also carry on the loving memory of the person or people you've lost. And so what do we do when these moments find us? It's important to remember, of course, that there is no timeline to grief. There's no, people focus on the steps or the stages, but those were never meant to be linear. They're not meant to be, okay, I've passed this one, now I'm on this one and I'm working through it. It's not a program. Grief is all encompassing, and it can, take us by surprise when we least expect it. We might expect to feel a very specific way right when it happens, and then not expect to feel that same way 3 years later out of the blue. And that's because grief has different levels, and they're not levels that we can expect or anticipate. We reach them when we reach them, and with them come an array of emotions and feelings and thoughts that are all really mixed together. There's no one feeling that we just have when we think of somebody that's died. Often we can experience profound sadness and also an extreme amount of gratitude and love. And, to feel those two or three emotions and feelings together at the same time is something that, is sometimes difficult to process or to differentiate. Am I feeling sad? Am I frustrated? Am I just filled with gratitude for the love that we shared? And sometimes there's just simply no words for what we're experiencing, and we just need to feel it and be with it. And we can certainly turn these moments that we might initially find difficult into very meaningful gestures of love as we memorialize our loved ones through acts of kindness or, simple things that we can include into our life on their behalf. If they had a great love of nature, planting trees in their honor. If you find yourself reminded of them via songs or certain shows, and they love those that music or that movie or that television show, buying the DVDs or whatever and gifting them to someone and saying, my loved one absolutely loved this, and maybe you'll find joy in it too. There's so much that we can think of when we focus on how we're feeling as these moments come up to us. And what can we do to make meaning out of it? What can we do to create purpose out of it? And sometimes when we focus on what we can alter to create a purposeful action in order to memorialize our loved ones, to keep their memory going, that can really help us to feel less isolated with our loss and our bereavement. And of course, taking time to remember them on special days. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, they're all going to come up. Sometimes the first ones are a bit of a blur because we're still in shock, even for unexpected death, even after a lengthy illness. We still endure a level of shock throughout those first several months, even up to the first year. And so these days might come and go and we'll feel them, but it won't be the same as, the year after and the year after as we navigate through our grieving journey. And so, of course, taking the time to remember them, to connect with them. We might reminisce about the way they would bake their favorite holiday dishes and bake those on their behalf and share them with our loved ones. Or, we might remember and take time to share with our loved ones that are here about the way we would surprise them with their favorite chocolate, so much that it became a family tradition. Almost like we have to get that for them because that's what they love, and it's been 20 years and that's, it's something that we always do, and still doing it. Because as we started at the beginning, death ends a life, but not our relationship, our love, or our hope. And these things that we do, these meaningful gestures, the way we speak of them and, constantly speak their name, sharing their stories, telling others, especially the young ones in the family, about this person or these people, how much it meant to have them in our lives, the joy they brought to us, even the things that we once found extremely irritating, how we find them endearing and, can laugh at them now. All of that can be such a healing force in our life when we take the time to not repress or not to, try to remain stoic and to, not face our grief openly. Not everybody is comfortable with sharing their emotions, and that's okay. Not everybody wants to wear their heart on their sleeve and have the whole world to know that they are absolutely in deep grief and it's been a hard day and they don't know how to, face what they're feeling. But as long as you try to express yourself maybe to one or two people, someone that you trust, someone that may have known them, and of course, reaching out to Palliative Manitoba's telephone bereavement support service, having someone who is trained to listen and to be there for you can be an immense help during that time of grief. We think of these moments, these little moments where, the way they would never put the cap of the toothpaste back on, or the way they would park, in front of our driveway, or just the little things, the very little things that we might have taken, I don't want to say take for granted, but, that we overlooked, that we might not have thought too much about when it happened or during the time. But then when we think of them and these little things come up where we remember the way they would say a certain word, or their laugh, or, how when they would laugh so hard, they, they would turn red, or, they would, how they had a specific type of writing. Maybe it was very illegible, or, anything that brings a smile to your face. And sometimes at first we might feel like, why am I smiling about something like this? I feel a little guilty. I'm smiling when they're gone. But it just might be that the reason these things come up, these little things, these little memories, these moments that we might have overlooked when they were still here, is because we're, being reminded that with that great loss was a tremendous amount of love, and that love deserves to be honored and to be, cherished. And as we cherish those moments and the little things about our loved ones, we might find ourselves filled with a new sense of gratitude and, um, you know, even motivation. What did our loved one teach us? If they had a passion for crosswords, or they like to read certain books, maybe you'll find joy in reading those books. Or if they like to take hikes or like to cycle, maybe that's something that you'll think of doing on their behalf or with them in your heart, knowing that they're with you, or feeling like somehow these actions, these moments that we take after the fact, bring us closer to them as they're in our memories and as they are constantly on our thoughts. All of those moments might have felt simple or ordinary when they happened, but now we find they are everything to us. And the comfort they bring, thinking of all of those little moments, all of those situations and experiences we had with them, they can be extremely helpful to us in our grief. And so, as we're talking today, I hope that you're thinking of the little moments, the little memories that your loved ones have brought to you over the years. Some might bring tears to your eyes, some may make you laugh and smile. And that's one of the things about grief, is that there's no right or wrong way to face it, to endure it, to move through it. But it can be much more difficult if we don't face it, if we try to put it off or get back to that idea of going back to normal, to go back to work too quickly or to get back to our routine. And some people thrive in routine, and that's perfectly fine. But what isn't faced today will eventually need to be faced at some point. And so when those little moments and the memories are coming up, you're driving to work and you hear their favorite song, or you're watching TV and some silly commercial they used to laugh at comes on, you might find yourself being very unexpectedly surprised by the emotions that come up to you. And what do we do with those? And if we don't feel like we're someone who likes to talk to other people, and not everyone is, we can certainly write them down, write a letter to our loved ones, or even talk to them. What would you say if you had the opportunity to say something else to them that maybe you didn't get to say before they left this world? And it might feel odd to do so at first, but it could also be very freeing. That whole idea, that metaphorical, getting it off your chest. We really hold grief all in here in our chest, and being able to express ourselves in whatever manner calls to us, speaking, writing, taking an action, going out for a hike on their behalf, doing something that is meaningful and purposeful, that not only reminds us of them or is inspired by them, but something that helps us along with enduring the physical loss that we have gained from them being gone. And if they liked animals and had an affinity for dogs or cats, you could walk some dogs at a shelter, or you could, take in a little kitten. There's so much that we can do that transforms and evolves our grief from feeling deep and isolating to purposeful and meaningful, and changing it into loving acts that not only help us but possibly others. And there are some griefs that are inexplicable with regards to how they feel, but there are so many people who endure very deep losses in life, and sometimes being that person to listen to others who are enduring what you might have endured many years ago, helping them and supporting them through what you've been through, knowing what they're likely thinking or likely going through at that time, that can also be tremendously helpful on your path, on your healing journey, by offering that service to be there and support them, and to hear about their loved ones. Not everybody has a support group around them that is able or has the capacity to listen to everything that a grieving person is going through or thinking or enduring. And you might know what that feels like. And to be there for others who might not have a lot of people to talk to, or people that have maybe they're uncomfortable. Not everybody's able to be a listening ear when someone they love is going through grief. You might want to be, but not everybody is equipped to handle that. And so that might be something that you can offer. Asking about their loved one. Tell me about them. What did they love? What reminds you of them? What are you doing to keep their memory alive? What are you doing to feel more connected with them as you go through your own grief journey? These are all things that we can ask others, but also ask ourselves. After several years, we might find that, the things that triggered us or reminded us of them aren't as prominent, or, maybe not containing as unexpected huge waves of grief as they once did. I mean, we might even feel sad about that. But that can also demonstrate how much we've worked through our grief. We've worked with our grief. We've faced it. We have felt the feelings and the thoughts, and they're might no longer be crashing over us the way they were, but they also still bring with them so much reason to feel grateful, to feel joyful that we had that time in our life with this person or these people who changed us just by being who they were, by having that place in our lives that could never be replaced, never be changed, never altered. And reminding ourselves that while we all know that life itself can be very short, there's so much life to live. And that if we can cherish these little moments daily with those that are still here, with those that we love and that we see every day, you might find a wealth of patience and compassion that we didn't have before. One thing people often feel in grief is irritability, the difficulty of understanding, people around them and how they're back to normal or going about their day when you feel like time has stopped and you don't know what you're going to do from here on out, and it can feel difficult and frustrating. But that can be cultivated into patience and compassion for yourself and others, knowing that you're doing the very best that you can, and remembering that everyone around you is doing the best that they can too. They might not show up the way that we need them to. They might not show up the way we expect them to. And maybe in the past we didn't understand either, and we weren't able to show up or be there for others the way they wanted or needed us to be. And this is where we have to encourage to open the lines of communication. I know you don't know how I'm feeling, but I would love it if you would just sit with me today. Teaching people how to help you in your grief. And, I know it makes you uncomfortable when I talk so much about them, but, you might find that they say, no, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I just don't want you to be sad. Clearing the air. There are a lot of misunderstandings that happen with others when we're grieving and when we're trying to navigate something that we have no idea how. There are many books and suggestions, of course, but when it comes to our own personal experiences with it, it's unique each and every time. And so what it might have worked in the past might not work with this one. We might find that we just need someone to hear us out and to hear our frustration, our anger, our guilt, as well as listening to all of the things that remind us of our loved one and how grateful we are for those times, how we cherish them so much now. And with that wealth of patience and compassion, you might find that you're able to extend that to others. encouraging them not to take anything for granted in this life. The little moments are what make up our great lives. We always look to the big things, the graduations, the weddings, all of that stuff. But it's the everyday, the in between, the things that we share, the things that just have such a powerful connection with our loved ones. And even opening the cupboard and seeing their favorite coffee mug, or going through the pantry and seeing their favorite tea or their favorite snack. Again, it might have seemed just so ordinary before they died. But when you see them now, all of a sudden, these are cherished memories. These are cherished items, things that when you hold, you can feel them. They're sure it's their, other items that they enjoyed. Maybe they have a musical instrument or, favorite book. And so it's important to take heart that the little moments that come up, the things that remind you of them, the things that make you both extremely sad, but also extremely grateful and joyful at the same time. Share those with others if you can. Because the more you share your grief, the more you express your grief, the more others might feel encouraged to do the same. And we can connect and we can share and support each other, which is something that not everyone has or not everyone knows how to do. Especially during this time, this last year, we all have something to grieve. Either we've lost a loved one or many loved ones, or jobs, or many different aspects of our life have been changed and altered. And grief isn't just about death. There's so much that we can connect about if we open our hearts and share with others. We don't have to tell anyone how to fix it or how to feel, because how one person feels or approaches one situation might be very different from how someone else does, but we can certainly share from our hearts. And when we share together, it can help us to recognize that in many ways, a lot of us, we're the same. We all go through our ups and downs. We all go through losses. We all go through the joys and the difficulties of life. It may all be at different times and in different ways, but everyone goes through these things. And again, that helps us to become more aware and compassionate and patient, knowing that while I might be experiencing deep grief today, someone who isn't may be experiencing it tomorrow, and that connects us. And we don't know when, we don't know how. So that just comes back to cherishing every single moment that we can, taking it slower, making sure that we are living a meaningful and purposeful life, and that we're not leaving anything unsaid or undone, telling our loved ones how much they mean to us, creating those moments that you hope that they'll think of when it's your time, making moments that last a lifetime. There's so much potential for us to connect and to share and to create memories with our loved ones, so that their names live on and our name lives on, and we live on in their hearts and they continue to live on in ours. And so I encourage you to think about your loved ones today. What reminds you of them? Who could you share that with? We have many platforms now. Social media is great for this, where not everyone knows about, I get not everyone wants to share private moments. but sometimes even just a little glimpse, an old picture, a favorite song, and just expressing that this reminds you of your loved one. Maybe you miss them today, and that's okay. You might be surprised how many other people post or respond with things that remind them of their loved ones, that they're missing someone today too. Grief and loss and death, they don't have to be closeted where we don't speak of them or discuss them. They can be out in the open so that we can share and connect and support each other during all aspects of our lives here. And so I encourage you today to think of what reminds you of your loved one, what helps you to feel connected with them, and to be sure that you're taking exquisite care of yourself always, extending the same compassion and patience that you would give others. I want to thank you for being here today, and I really hope that you enjoyed this seminar. It's been a great honor, and I hope that you take good care. Thank you. Goodbye.